Hey everybody, this is Hoang,
And zero?
and today we're talking about memory management in the Digimon TCG 2020 card game. So, for those of you that don't know, memory is a resource that originated in the Chrono Clash game, and it's kind of similar to Tug of War. Whenever you expend memory, which is the cost of your cards, your opponent gains that memory, and whenever the memory gauge goes to 1 on their side or more, it becomes their turn. So, every action that you take gives your opponent more room for a resource on their turn and enables counterplay. In this video, we're going to talk about the cost of cards and how much cost is appropriate for deciding what course of action you should do on your turn.
Okay, so let's start off by talking about vanilla. As mentioned in our previous video, vanilla are generally the most cost-efficient card at their respective level. And because of this, when deck building, sometimes vanilla are just the best in slot over a more powerful card that has an effect just because they allow you to scale to your higher level Digimon that generally have much more powerful effect much faster. And that's not the only reason why vanilla are generally strong, right?
Yeah, so whenever your opponent gives you 3 memory, which is common, or maybe you have a memory tamer of some sort, from your raising area, if you have a level 3 in the raising area, then off of a level 4 vanilla and a level 5 vanilla, you can hit exactly 0 memory, because the level 4 vanilla is 1 cost and level 5 vanilla is 2. And then from there, you can either go into another vanilla and lock your opponent to 2, or you can go into another level 6, and then from there, you can take tempo from that point on. Next. Now, let's talk about memory tamers. Currently, there are only the 6 memory tamers you see on the screen in set 1.0, however, in set 1.5 we'll receive more memory tamers. The memory tamers all cost 4 memory to play, and they set you to 3 at the start of your turn if you are at 2 or less. Memory tamers are really beneficial as they allow you to continue playing the game and prevent you from getting memory choked. However, they are also detrimental because of the steep cost of investment that you have to pay initially. If you play a memory tamer on your very first turn and give your opponent 4 memory, you allow them to go from level 2 to level 6 playing vanillas within their raising area, which is a lot of tempo that you're giving up. So, keep this in mind when you play Digimon. However, that's not the only way they impact the game state.
That's correct, and this is because memory tamers set you to 3 memory. They also incentivize your opponent to play a lot of memory costs because you're going to go through 3 memory anyway, so there's no reason for your opponent to choke you out of memory. They're going to be playing their higher cost card or multiple cards at the same turn, therefore effectively speeding up the speed of the game. And depending on the type of deck you're running, that's not something you necessarily really want. With that said, not every deck needs to have a memory tamer to function. We've seen this with build like the fast Omnimon build. Blue in general also doesn't need memory tamer. They're very cost efficient, and green is another very cost efficient color that doesn't need memory tamer. Vice versa, you have color like yellow and black, which absolutely need the memory tamer to function. And to a lesser extent, purple kind of needed to play well, otherwise they are slowed down by not having a memory tamer. And with that, let's move on. So next, let's talk about how much memory you should give over to your opponent. Well, this is something that you need to know when playing against certain color and what specific threshold that color is capable of. So for example, if you're playing against blue and you're knowing that they may run Metal Garurumon, well, you might want to keep them locked to 2 or 1 memory if they don't have access to a memory tamer to prevent them from playing a Metal Garurumon and attacking on the same turn and getting value and tempo off of that. Whereas locking them to maybe a Plesionomon is less of a tempo heavy play, or even if you're playing against a fast Omnimon build, locking them to 1 could prevent them from going into Plesionomon and Omnimon on the same turn. And all of this comes down to knowing the general game plan of the deck you're playing against. And really, this is something you only gain with experience and general knowledge of the card pool. And also, let's talk about when is a good opportunity to give over a lot of memory to your opponent, because realistically, you can't play conservative and memory choke all the time.
Well, Zero, that's a really good question, and as the resident caveman Digimon player, I think I have an answer to it. So, whenever you play with an abundance of memory and giving it over to your opponent, you have to understand what is your win con and what is the opponent's win con, and how you can play around both of these scenarios. You as the player want to achieve X, and your opponent wants to achieve Y. You have to get to X while preventing your opponent from getting to Y. And so knowing what certain outs your opponent has or he's looking for is really crucial. Cards like Piedmon, for example, give over 12 memory to your opponent in exchange for calling 2 level 4 or lower purple Digimon from your trash. This is a really powerful effect, and it's a really good way to push for lethal, and the reason why is because every Digimon is worth 1 point of damage, or 1 security worth of damage, and because of that, you're able to swing with 3 different bodies for the cost of 12 memory, which is really strong, because if your opponent can't answer it via Gaia Force or Omegamon, for example, then you can just go for game. Vice versa, you can also call blockers off of the Piedmon in order to delay game and set yourself up for the winning scenario. Now, this is also a reason why Memory Tamer is good in purple, because Piedmon is 12, and so if you get locked to 1, you can't play the Piedmon. Touching on this, there's one more piece of memory management that I want to touch on. Cheap Hard Slam Digimon. In the top left hand corner of every Digimon card, there is a play cost for when you play the Digimon from your hand. The Digimon on your screen, as you can notice, have a relatively low play cost for their levels, and the reason you want to incorporate some of these into your deck is because you're not always going to open a level 3 on turn 1. When you don't open a level 3 on turn 1, generally you have to hard play a Digimon and give your opponent an excessive amount of memory. Playing Digimon like these, you can minimize the amount of memory that you pass your opponent early despite having no level 3 in your hand, and sometimes you can actually go from there because remember, Digimon use cycle, so as long as you have the next piece of the link, you can keep your game plan going smooth. So, incorporating these into your deck will increase the consistency of your deck overall. Moving on, we now have memory manipulation. Your opponent giving you memory isn't the only way for you to gain memory during your turn. Actually, you have a lot of cards such as Lilithmon, or Hammerspark,
Bad Hammerspark.
or Digitamamon, for example, are really good because they allow you to continue playing your turn without your opponent giving you that interaction. Hammerspark, for example, is a really strong card because it is a non-interactive gain of free memory essentially. And it also has a really strong security effect, being gain 2 memory, which can possibly end your opponent's turn. Lilithmon, while being conditional unlike Hammerspark, requiring you to play an option, is also really strong because gaining 2 memory makes cards like Grizzly Wing or even Hammerspark really good. Digitamamon and cards akin to it, while they give you 3 memory on attack, you end up losing the 3 memory at the end of your turn. This is really important to understand because while you gain memory, you're also giving your opponent memory or more memory to play with on their turn. So keep this in mind when you incorporate these type of cards into your deck.
With all that said, the memory system will take time to get used to, so please don't feel discouraged if you don't understand it at first. It's gonna take a little bit of time for you to get used to it, even if you are experienced with a lot of other traditional card games.
Right, so I've played my fair share of card games. I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! I've played Vanguard, right? Memory to me is such an interesting resource system, and there's so many different ways to interact with your opponent in a non-orthodox way, right? You don't have counterspells and stuff like that, but you choose how much resource your opponent plays with. With all of this in mind, we really hope that you enjoy the Digimon TCG game, and we hope that your gameplay can increase to a competitive level. Thanks for watching, guys.
Yep, thanks guys.